3 months ago, I was Arthur Vance, the CEO of a transport company worth about $42 million. And today, I'm living in a cheap rented apartment because my own son Logan dragged me into court and called me a senile old man. I lost everything, even my good name. But the worst part is this: Logan did it because it was his mother's final request, my late wife's last wish. He betrayed me to save me. What secret was so heavy, so dark, that Eleanor, the woman I loved all my life, had to stage a disaster like this for our family? I found the answer in a little USB drive, burned nearly to ash. If you've ever been misunderstood by your own family, hit subscribe and tell me which city you're listening from. Get ready, because this is only the beginning of the fall. Now, I'm a 62-year-old man, living in what they like to call a studio apartment, out on the edge of Atlanta. Sounds fancy, but truth is, it's just a concrete box with the smell of cheap paint and industrial cleaner hanging in the air. I sit here in the shadow of the man I used to be. 3 months, 3 long months since the day I was thrown out of VGL, the transport company I built with my own 2 hands, starting from an old beat-up truck I bought on credit back in 1988. I still remember the name I gave it: Vance Global Logistics. It wasn't just a job. It was the breath in my lungs. On paper, sure, folks said it was worth around $42 million. But to me it was 40 years of sweat, nights falling asleep on the office sofa, mornings when Eleanor brought me coffee and a warm croissant, only to find me still hunched over that damned Excel sheet. She never complained. Eleanor always said, "Honey, this company is our first child. The $5 million lakefront house. I sold that a while ago to pay the lawyers. But I can't forget the handmade oak floors where she and I danced that clumsy little waltz on her last Christmas Eve. And now this tiny room I live in has nothing but a folding bed, a plastic table, and a view of a parking lot. The scariest part isn't losing money. It's losing trust. Eleanor's death, it happened about 18 months ago in Europe. Sudden, a heart attack. I never found my footing after that. I started working 18 hours a day trying to fill the hole she left. Maybe I went a little off balance, but no one could have predicted what came 6 months later. I can still see that boardroom, the long walnut table, 20 feet of polished wood where I'd signed hundreds of major deals. I sat there facing Logan, my son, my only son, the one I believed would take over everything one day. Beside him was Marcus Thorne, VGL's senior attorney, a man who used to be my closest friend back in college. Thorne started talking first cold professional. He slid a mountain of documents across the table. Medical notes, screenshots of emails I apparently sent at 3 a.m. with wild business ideas, and worst of all, a falsified meeting record I had never seen in my life. It claimed I agreed to invest $5 million of company cash into some impossible, unproven driverless transport tech, and that I'd signed for it. I knew I hadn't, but that signature, God, it looked real enough to haunt me. Then Logan spoke. I can still hear it. His voice deeper than mine, steady but full of something hard. He didn't look at me. He looked at the board, and he said, in this painful, determined tone, "I know this is difficult, but ever since Mom passed, my father hasn't been himself. He's putting the company at risk. I believe he's lost the capacity to lead. I have to do this." I couldn't say a word. Not because I was shocked, but because the pain was so sharp it choked the air right out of my throat. I wanted to yell, to slam my fist down, to call Logan every name I could think of, but I just sat there, frozen. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving nothing but an empty shell. When the board voted to strip me of control, Logan turned toward me. Just for a moment our eyes met. Cold? Yes. But beneath that coldness there was something else, something quick and deep. A kind of fear I couldn't understand at the time. I thought it was guilt. Guilt from a greedy son. The final blow came in court. Logan won. I lost VGL. I lost my name. When the judge ruled that I was a potential threat to the $42 million asset of the shareholders, Logan stood up. He walked past me, calm, distant, but before he reached the door, he said, "Something I'll carry to my grave. I did this, Father, to protect the legacy Mom helped build." I watched him walk away. Legacy. He was using Eleanor's death to justify stealing the company, and he dared to speak her name like a shield. That betrayal, it cut deeper than death. I was pushed out of my own life, left completely alone. And that's when the thought first crept in. Was Eleanor part of this? Was all of it planned from the very beginning? That question, it started haunting me in this cheap little studio. It played over and over in my head like a scratched old record chewing away at whatever piece I had left. Eleanor, the woman who walked beside me for more than 3 decades, from a rattling old truck to a lakefront mansion. And now Logan dared to use her name to justify what he did. I'd already lost Logan. Lost my youngest daughter, too. She believed every word in that incapacity file they waved around in court. What did I have left? Nothing, except my old '69 sports car. The only thing Logan and Thorne didn't bother touching, probably because they thought it was just some useless toy an old man clung to. I decided to sell it, not because I needed the money, but because I didn't want one more thing reminding me of who I used to be. I arranged to meet a collector out on the west side of Atlanta, but on the way there, I took a turn. There was one place I had to go, one last time. Eleanor's little art gallery, the place she spent her final years. Hidden in a quiet alley in Midtown, far from the noise and rush. She called it the Sanctuary. I hadn't stepped foot in it since she died, 18 months ago. I parked the car. The outside was still, calm, just like she was. I used the spare key, the only piece of her I still carried. A soft clack, the heavy oak door opened. The smell hit me first. Oil paint, canvas, and her perfume. The same scent she'd worn for more than 20 years. It punched straight into my chest. Stopped me cold. Not out of grief, but because her presence was so strong, it felt like she was standing right behind me. Everything was in order, except for a thin layer of dust. Her abstract paintings hung on the walls, full of color, full of life. The exact opposite of the silence in that room. I walked into her little office in the back. It was untouched, like she had just stepped out to make tea. A simple mahogany desk, nothing like the fancy CEO thing I had at VGL. I brushed my hand across it. The wood felt cold as stone. I sat down in her worn leather chair. I thought I'd feel comfort, but instead, a cold anger crept in. She was gone. Logan had betrayed me. And here I was, searching for a ghost. I started rummaging without really thinking. Pencils, brushes, tiny scraps of notes, everything neat and orderly. But one drawer, the lower right one, was locked. She always kept a few personal things there, maybe a journal, maybe charity papers. My hands were shaking. I didn't have the key. I found a thick paperclip and a small screwdriver in her toolkit. Took me about 10 minutes to work that old lock open. It popped loose with a dry little snap like a bone breaking. Inside, no journal, just some old bank files, letters from the veterans she helped, and a worn sketchbook. It wasn't filled with drawings, only complex shapes, numbers, and shipping symbols I used at VGL a decade ago. And then I saw it. Tucked deep in the back corner, a small black object. A USB drive, burned on one side. I knew it right away. Eleanor had tried to mail it to me from Europe a few days before she died. By the time I received it, it was too late. The thing was damaged, and I tossed it in a drawer without a second thought. I picked it up. My fingers caught on the melted plastic. What happened to it? Who tried to destroy it? Right then, my old phone vibrated in my coat pocket. A hidden number. I hesitated, then answered. The voice was a young woman's, shaky, scared. She didn't greet me. She whispered straight into the heart of it. "Mr. Vance, I'm the one Eleanor asked to keep an eye on you. I have only one thing to tell you. Your enemy isn't your son. Fix the USB. It's evidence. And don't trust Attorney Thorne." Then a sharp click. The call ended. I shot to my feet. The leather chair groaned behind me. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free. Logan wasn't the enemy. Thorne, Eleanor asked someone to watch over me. What was she investigating? I stared at the charred USB in my hand. So small. But now it carried the weight of $42 million and my life. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't some business dispute. This was a death match, a game of survival. And Eleanor, she'd set her final pieces in place before someone took her off the board. I had to fix this thing, no matter what it cost me. The cold from that scorched little USB had seeped straight into my palm, even in the heavy Atlanta heat. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't walk into some neighborhood repair shop like an old fool. Thorne, or whoever was hiding behind him, was surely watching every move I made. A 62-year-old man labeled incompetent, suddenly trying to fix a burned USB that would set off alarms fast. I thought of an old friend, a retired data recovery wizard who lived 2 hours outside the city. His name was Sal. Sal never cared about corporate politics, just wires, solder, and the quiet language of broken circuits. With the little money I had left, about $2,000, I hired him. 2 days, 2 long, sleepless days, sitting in Sal's cluttered house, staring at that tiny piece of hardware. I didn't sleep, couldn't. Every thought drifted back to Eleanor. What had she uncovered? What had she endured in those final days before that sudden death? The guilt sat on my chest like a weight. I'd been so swallowed by grief. I never realized she was fighting a war alone. Finally, on the evening of the second day, Sal called out to me, "Arthur, it's done. Someone sabotaged it on purpose. But the data, you'd better take a look." I plugged the restored USB into his dusty old computer. A folder appeared full of video files. Not business documents. They were Eleanor's secret recordings, her private video logs from the last 3 months of her life. I opened the first one. Eleanor appeared on screen, thinner, exhausted. Behind her was the gallery. She sighed, looked straight into the camera. "Arthur, my love, if you're watching this, then I've failed. I discovered VGL isn't just a transport company. About 3 years ago, Marcus Thorne turned our warehouses and trucks into a covert pipeline. Remember that high-value electronics shipment that was mysteriously canceled 2 years back? It was a cover. Thorne's been using VGL to move illegal crypto mining rigs and launder money for the Gray Syndicate. I estimate around $5 million has already moved through our facilities. $5 million. The same cursed figure Logan used in court to prove I'd made reckless investments. My hands began to shake. Eleanor kept speaking, fear in her eyes, but a fierce resolve in her voice. "Thorne isn't your friend. He's the Gray Syndicate's man inside VGL. He's sunk roots into every corner of the company. When you drowned in grief after your mother passed, he started isolating you, blocking meetings, forging your signature." I leaned back, gasping. I had trusted Thorne like a brother. He'd stood beside me at my wedding. He was Logan's godfather, and he was a venomous snake. Eleanor's eyes were red now. She was in a hotel room somewhere in Europe. She whispered, "I've gathered the evidence. The codes in my sketchbook are the key. I found records of the laundering operation. I was preparing to return to Atlanta to expose him. But he found out I'm getting sick. Doctors say heart issues, but I know better. Thorne used a traceless toxin. I've confirmed it. He doesn't just want VGL's $42 million empire. He wants the evidence destroyed. And he wants you gone, Arthur. He needs you removed to keep that $5 million operation buried." Tears ran down my face, hot, silent, relentless. Eleanor died because of me. She was murdered, and I had been too blind to see it. "Arthur, I know you'll be hurt, and you'll hate Logan, but I did something terrible and necessary. I contacted him. I knew he loved you. I forced him into this. He had to sue you, had to pretend to betray you. Why? Because only the court could freeze all of VGL's assets with an incompetency ruling. If you couldn't run the company, then Thorne couldn't sell it. It was the only way to save the business and your life. Logan is protecting you. Please, don't hate him. I've arranged for a loyal attorney. She'll find you. Do what she and Logan tell you." The screen went black. The tiny USB slipped from my hand and fell to the floor, a small, dry little thud. But that sound shattered everything inside me. My anger toward Logan, my blind mourning for Eleanor, my faith in the man I once called a friend. All of it was lies. Logan wasn't a traitor. He was a son carrying a terrible burden. Eleanor wasn't just a victim. She was a warrior who laid down her life. I closed my eyes. A crushing swell of grief, love, and remorse rose in my chest. I had to find my boy. I had to look him in the eye and beg his forgiveness. I picked up the USB and left Sal's house. Immediately I called Logan. I didn't mention the drive. I only said I need to see you. Right now. Somewhere no one knows. I chose an abandoned old church, First Baptist, out in the northern suburbs. Eleanor and I had once donated money to fix its roof 20 years ago. It always felt safe. I drove through the storm inside my own heart. The tightness in my throat was no longer anger, it was regret. I'd looked at my son through the eyes of a wounded father. and he'd had to carry his mother's impossible secret alone. He had to act, lie, destroy our bond, just to keep me breathing. I reached the church first. The place was bleak, stained glass windows, broken dust over every oak pew. Evening light filtered through the cracks in soft, crooked beams. I sat in the front row, head bowed. About 10 minutes later, I heard slow footsteps. Logan. He looked worn down, dark circles, rumpled shirt. Nothing like the polished COO of a $42 million company. He stopped 10 paces away, standing in the shadows. "What do you want, Arthur?" He still used that cold name, part of the role he'd forced himself to play for Thorne. I rose slowly. Didn't speak, just walked toward him. Placed the USB in his hand. "You don't have to pretend anymore, son," I rasped. "Your mother? She told me everything." He stared at the drive, then at me, and in that instant the wall of ice he'd held up for 6 long months collapsed. His eyes filled with tears, not of defeat but of exhaustion. He pulled me into a hug, a man's hug, heavy, trembling, full of truth. I held him tight, felt his body shaking. "I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I had no choice," he choked out. "Thorne, he's been watching us everywhere. Mom told me. Never let anything slip. I knew you'd hate me. But freezing the assets was the only way. If we didn't do it, Thorne would have sold everything long ago." Then he told me more. Things that made my skin crawl. Thorne had planted listening devices in VGL's offices. Even in our old home. He hired a surveillance team to track my movements after Eleanor died. Logan had been performing a role so convincing. He even had to spit out cruel lines in front of the board just to make Thorne believe we were done with each other. "Dad, that $5 million meeting memo," Logan asked. "That was Mom. She left it on purpose, knowing Thorne would use it. She wanted a legal trigger the court couldn't ignore. It hit me harder than any punch. Thorne wasn't afraid I was losing my mind. He was afraid I'd discover the $5 million laundering ring and the truth behind Eleanor's death. "What do we do now?" I asked quietly. "We follow Mom's last plan," Logan said, his voice steadier now. "She hired an honest attorney, Diana Hayes. She's waiting. Thorne has scheduled a final board meeting tomorrow to complete the sale of VGL. That's our one chance, our only chance. To bring him down, we left the church together. Night had swallowed Atlanta. My son and I were whole again, stitched back together with pain, truth, and the love of a woman who'd given everything she had. And now, our path was clear. Expose Marcus Thorne, finish what Eleanor started, and take back the legacy she died protecting. After meeting Logan in that abandoned old church, everything settled into place, cold and painfully clear. The next stop was Diana Hayes, the attorney Eleanor had trusted with her life. A sharp young woman, calm, focused, someone who had quietly walked alongside Logan through that manufactured lawsuit meant to strip me of control. We had everything now, Eleanor's USB, Logan's confession, those old codebooks tied to the shipments. All that remained was the final act, and it was set for the next morning, right at VGL headquarters. I hadn't stepped into that building in months. When the taxi dropped me off in the front lobby, I had to stop, breathe in, steady myself. Everything still looked polished, bright, impressive. But to me it was an empty shell now held together by lies. Logan waited for me near the private elevator. "Dad, everything's ready," he whispered. "Diana and the feds are just waiting for my signal." His voice trembled, but he stood tall. I nodded. This wasn't about a $42 million company anymore. It was about justice for Eleanor and redemption for my son. We walked into the boardroom together. Marcus Thorne was already there, sitting like a king at the head of the table. The board members stayed quiet, stiff. When he saw me, his grin twisted wider. Well, well, Arthur," he drawled. "Didn't think the court would let you back inside the building. Here to say your last goodbyes to Vance Global Logistics. I'm here to reclaim what's mine, Marcus." My voice came out calm, almost too calm. I took my old seat. Thorne laughed under his breath. "Your son's done a fine job leading us to today's decision. By the end of this meeting, VGL will be sold. No more legacy, no more drama, just a big payday for the new owners." He slid a contract across the table. Logan played his part flawlessly. "Before we sign, there's a small issue. We need to clarify that every shipment this past year was legal, completely clean. Can you confirm that?" Mr. Thorne. Thorne's jaw tightened. "Everything is clean." Logan quit wasting our time. That was my cue. I stood, walked right up to him, and placed Eleanor's old sketchbook on the table. pages full of coded entries, circled notes, and the phrase 5 million, underlined. Again and again. Marcus, I said softly, Eleanor found everything. You used VGL to move illegal crypto mining rigs, to launder money for the Gray Syndicate. She died because of you. The room went silent, breathless. Thorne cracked first. He leapt up, pointing at me, shouting, "He's insane, I told you all. He's lost his mind, Logan. Get him out of here. Security." Logan stepped forward, but instead of pushing me out, he leaned close to Thorne and whispered, "My mother recorded. You. Every word you said when you ordered me to help stage the lawsuit. And my dad knows you swapped out her medication." And just like that, Thorne shattered. He blurted out, trembling, "Fine, fine, yes, I did it." She wouldn't back off. "I had to protect my 5 million, and I told your boy to get rid of you." The board froze. No one dared move. Then the doors swung open. FBI agents stormed in. And behind them stood Diana Hayes, steady as a rock. "Marcus Thorne," she said coldly, "you're under arrest for murder, money laundering, and federal fraud." They hauled him out, pale, defeated, broken. Logan let out a long breath, 6 months of fear finally leaving his body. With Thorne gone, the Gray Syndicate exposed, and VGL back in our hands, we should have felt triumphant. But all I could feel was the weight of what this company had taken from us. I turned to Logan. "Son, I don't want this company anymore." He stared at me stunned. "But Dad, no. We fought for justice, not for a $42 million empire. Your mom's life was worth more than any number on a balance sheet. We're not handing this place to another monster." And so, together, we made the final choice. We sold off most of VGL to a reputable transport group, used the funds to repay the 5 million, clean the slate, tear out every rotten piece left behind. Then I gave Logan the reins to a new VGL, smaller, honest, rebuilt from the ground up. He deserved that chance, that fresh start. As for me, I took a large part of my own assets and created the Eleanor Vance Art Scholarship Fund. It wasn't a $42 million empire, but it was the legacy she would have wanted. Now, here I sit in this small rented studio, finally breathing easier. Eleanor's photo sits right in front of me, and every time I look at it, I whisper, VGL may have lost its fortune, but it saved my life, and it saved our son. Your love was bigger than any empire, Ellie. Logan and I, we're closer than ever now, because sometimes the cruelest betrayal is actually the deepest act of love hidden behind pain, sacrifice, and a plan only a brave woman could design. And that's where my story ends. If you were in Logan's shoes, would you carry that burden? Would you let someone you love hate you just to keep them alive? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched you, hit that like button to help it reach more folks. Don't forget to subscribe and tap the bell icon so you won't miss the next family drama, full of twists, heartache, and maybe a little healing. Thank you for listening to my long, painful, and meaningful journey. Hold tight to the quiet relationships in your own life. They matter more than you think. I'll see you next time.